Prepare to be plunged into the eerie and spine-chilling world of horror stories. Today we're diving into the haunting tale of Secrets in the Desert, a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you enjoy our content. Share with your friends so they can experience the terror too. Now, turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and let's journey into the darkness together. Chapter 1. Secrets in the Desert. The sun beat down mercilessly on the barren landscape as Jess stood, gazing at the lifeless form at her feet. She looked up, her dark eyes meeting those of her lover, Marco. His expression was a mix of concern and determination as he knelt beside her. "Are you sure about this, Jess?" Marco's voice was hushed, barely audible over the howling wind. Jess nodded solemnly, her mind racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. "I'm sure he deserved this." Together, they began to dig, sound of shovels piercing the eerie silence of the desert. With each scoop of dirt, the weight of their actions seemed to grow heavier. As they worked, Jess couldn't help but steal glances at Marco, admiring the way the sunlight caught the edges of his rugged features. Despite the gravity of the situation, a warmth spread through her chest at the sight of him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they stood back, the shallow grave now filled with earth. Jess took a step closer to Marco, her heart pounding in her chest. Without a word, he pulled her into his arms, his lips meeting hers in a desperate kiss. At that moment, the world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the secrets they shared. Breaking apart, they shared a knowing look before Marco spoke, his voice laced with a hint of mischief. "Well, that was certainly one way to end a marriage." Jess couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the moment finally beginning to ebb away. "I suppose it was." As they walked back to their car, the weight of their actions hung heavy in the air. But for now, all Jess could focus on was the feeling of Marco's hand in hers, and the promise of a new beginning on the horizon. Chapter 2. The Hotel. As the miles stretched on, the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the desert landscape. Jess and Marco rode in silence, the weight of their actions hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Jess broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are we going to do with the insurance money?" Marco glanced over at her, his brow furrowed in thought. "I don't know. We could stash it away somewhere, start fresh somewhere far away from here." Jess nodded, her mind already spinning with possibilities. "That could work. Maybe start a new life. Just the two of us." The thought of leaving everything behind filled Jess with a strange mix of excitement and fear. But as she looked over at Marco, she knew that together they could face whatever came their way. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they spotted a lone hotel in the distance, its neon sign flickering in the fading light. Without a word, Marco steered the car towards it, the gravel crunching beneath the tires as they pulled into the parking lot. The Hotel California loomed before them, its faded facade giving it an air of mystery. Jess couldn't help but shiver as they stepped inside, the chill of the desert night creeping in. As they checked into their room, Jess couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over her. But as Marco wrapped his arm around her, she pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the promise of a new beginning that lay ahead. Chapter 3. Timeless Encounter. As Jess and Marco stepped into the lobby of the Hotel California, they found themselves not alone. Other guests milled about, their presence adding to the surreal atmosphere of the place. The desk worker greeted them with the same emotionless demeanor, his eyes betraying no hint of recognition. Marco couldn't resist his playful banter. "Why call it the Hotel California when it's nestled here in Nevada?" A ghost of a smile flickered across the attendant's lips. "Because, much like California, this place holds its own charm." Amidst the aged decor, the couple followed the attendant to their room, passing by others who seemed lost in their own world, lost in time. Their room, like the rest of the hotel, felt like a relic from another era. Marco playfully flopped onto the bed, his eyes scanning the room with a mix of amusement and curiosity. "This place sure has its own character," earning a chuckle from Jess. Their hunger prompted them to accept the attendant's invitation to the dining hall, where they found themselves among the other guests, each table occupied by couples and individuals, their attire and demeanor reminiscent of a bygone era. The dining hall, with its dim lighting and heavy curtains, exuded an old-world charm. The attendant, in an attempt to lighten the mood, shared a series of jokes with the guests, though his delivery left much to be desired, eliciting more groans than laughs. As they sat down to dinner, Jess couldn't help but notice the dated closeness of the other guests, the air thick with nostalgia and mystery. Yet, amidst the oddity of it all, she found a strange sense of comfort in the familiarity of Marco's presence. Together, they shared in the laughter and absurdity of the evening, grateful for the unexpected adventure that had brought them to this peculiar place. Chapter 4: A Night of Revelry. As Jess and Marco settled into their seats at the dining hall of the Hotel California, they found themselves drawn into conversation with a young woman named Tiffany. Her long blonde hair cascaded down her shoulders, framing a face that exuded elegance and charm. The conversation flowed easily, laughter punctuating the air as they shared stories and exchanged jokes. At one point, Marco made the mistake of assuming one of the men sitting with Tiffany was her boyfriend, only to be corrected with a playful smile. "Oh, him," Tiffany chuckled, shaking her head. "He's just a pretty boy, nothing more than a friend." As the evening wore on, the captain at the table, a distinguished gentleman with a twinkle in his eye, ordered a bottle of his favorite wine from 1969. As the wine flowed freely, so too did the stories, each more strange and captivating than the last. The captain launched into a tale about a war that had taken place in 1969, his words painting a vivid picture of a time long past. Jess and Marco listened intently, caught up in the magic of the moment. As the night wore on and the wine continued to flow, the conversation became more animated, laughter louder and more infectious. Jess and Marco found themselves drawn into the revelry, their worries and cares melting away in the warmth of newfound friendship. Finally, as the evening drew to a close, Jess and Marco stumbled back to their room, the effects of the wine leaving them giddy and light-headed. As they collapsed onto the bed, their laughter echoed through the room, mingling with the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the curtains. "We're going to be rich," Marco slurred, his words punctuated by fits of giggles. Jess giggled in response, her heart overflowing with joy. "Yes, we are," she agreed, her voice filled with the promise of a future brighter than they could have ever imagined. And as they drifted off to sleep, their dreams filled with visions of wealth and adventure, they knew that their journey was only just beginning. Chapter 5: Trapped in Time. In the depths of the night, Jess found herself drifting into a restless slumber, her mind swirling with memories and fears. In her dream, she sat across from her ex-husband at a familiar dinner table, the air thick with tension. He spoke softly, his words filled with regret and longing. "Jess, I still care about you. I've always cared about you." But before Jess could respond, he collapsed onto the table, his drink spilling across the pristine white cloth. She couldn't help but laugh, the sound echoing through the empty room. As she woke with a start, the laughter lingered, mingling the warmth of Marco's embrace. They lay entwined in each other's arms, the events of the night before already fading into memory. With a shared laugh and a whispered conversation, they rose from their bed, ready to face whatever the day held in store. But as they stepped towards the door, a sense of unease settled over them. To their surprise, when they reached for the doorknob, it vanished into thin air, leaving them standing in confusion. They tried again and again, but each time they attempted to leave, they found themselves back at the front desk of the Hotel California. Chapter 6: Trapped in Terror. As the realization dawned upon Jess and Marco that they were trapped within the confines of the Hotel California, a sense of horror washed over them like a suffocating wave. Their attempts to leave were met with the same eerie result, always returning to the lobby, no matter how far they ventured. Desperation fueled their actions as they confronted the desk clerk, demanding answers. But the clerk's response sent shivers down their spines, her words dripping with a chilling calmness. "You can check in, but you can never leave," he said, her smile sending a shudder down Jess's spine. Marco, his patience worn thin, snapped. He brandished a gun, pointing it at the clerk, his hands trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. But to their horror, the clerk's smile only widened, unfazed by the threat. "Do you want to check in?" she asked, her voice unnervingly serene. With a cry of frustration, Marco pulled the trigger, the sound echoing through the lobby like a thunderclap. But instead of falling to the ground, the clerk simply straightened up, her smile never wavering. "Very well, a room for two," she said, her tone unchanged. Without another word, Jess and Marco turned and fled down the corridor, their hearts pounding in their chests. But their escape was short-lived as they heard the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. Turning a corner, they came face to face with a group of deformed hotel staff, their twisted forms contorted into grotesque shapes. With a scream of terror, Jess and Marco turned and ran, their pursuers hot on their heels. Corridors seemed to stretch on endlessly, twisting and turning in on themselves like a labyrinth of nightmares. With each passing moment, the terror grew, the certainty of their impending doom closing in around them. But Jess and Marco refused to give up hope, clinging to each other as they ran, their only thought to escape the clutches of the Hotel California before it was too late. Chapter 7. Confronting the Past. As Jess and Marco sprinted through the labyrinthine corridors of the Hotel California, their breath coming in ragged gasps, they rounded a corner and came face to face with a figure that froze them in their tracks. It was Jess's dead husband. He was a ghastly sight, his once handsome features twisted into a grotesque mask, his flesh pallid and decayed like that of a corpse. He staggered towards them, his movements jerky and unnatural. Jess recoiled in horror, her heart pounding in her chest as she stared at the twisted visage of the man she had once loved. Marco instinctively moved to shield her, his grip tightening on her hand as they backed away. But the undead figure continued to advance, his empty eyes fixed on Jess with a hunger that sent a chill down her spine. She could hear his voice, a distorted whisper that echoed in the depths of her mind. "Jess, I still care about you," he groaned, his voice a guttural rasp that sent shivers down her spine. With a cry of fear and revulsion, Jess stumbled backward, her mind reeling with the horror of the situation. How could this be happening? How could her dead husband be standing before her, twisted and deformed like some grotesque parody of life? But there was no time for answers, no time to dwell on the impossible. With Marco's hand tight in hers, Jess turned and ran, the sound of her dead husband's moans echoing in her ears as they fled deeper into the heart of the hotel. The terror of their surroundings pressed in on them from all sides, threatening to consume them with each passing moment. But Jess and Marco refused to give up hope, clinging to each other as they fought to escape the nightmare that had engulfed them. For in the darkness of the Hotel California, where reality twisted and warped like a waking nightmare, the only thing they could be sure of was each other. Together, they would face whatever horrors awaited them, determined to find a way out of the darkness before it was too late. Chapter 8. Shadows of Retribution. As Jess and Marco raced through the twisting corridors of the Hotel California, pursued by the ghastly specter of Jess's dead husband, panic clawed at their hearts, threatening to consume them. In the chaos of their flight, they became separated, each facing their own nightmarish ordeal. Marco stumbled into Tiffany, the alluring French girl they had met earlier, her beauty captivating him even in the midst of terror. But before he could comprehend the danger, Tiffany's seductive charms ensnared him, drawing him into a deadly trap. With a flash of steel, Tiffany's true intentions were revealed as she plunged a knife into Marco's chest, his cries of agony echoing through the silent halls of the hotel. His lifeless body crumpled to the ground, tragic victim of Tiffany's twisted desires. Meanwhile, Jess pressed on through the labyrinthine catacombs beneath the hotel, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she fought to escape the clutches of her relentless pursuer. But just as freedom seemed within her grasp, she found herself face to face with her dead husband, his eyes empty voids of darkness. With a sickening lurch, Jess realized the truth. There was no escape from the Hotel California, no respite from the horrors that lurked within its cursed walls. As her husband's cold embrace enveloped her, she felt the icy sting of his bite against her neck, draining the life from her with each agonizing moment. As darkness closed in around her, Jess heard his whispered words, a chilling promise of eternal torment. "We can be together forever," he murmured, his voice a haunting echo of the horrors that awaited them both in the endless depths of the hotel. So, SCP-1437, aka the Hotel California, is like this super eerie paranormal spot, you know? Picture this vintage hotel straight out of the early 1900s, all faded signs and old school charm. But here's the kicker. Once you step inside, you're stuck. Like, seriously stuck. No leaving, no matter how hard you try. This place isn't just creepy on the outside either. Inside, it's like a maze that messes with your head. Corridors that seem to stretch forever, rooms that shift around like they've got a mind of their own, enough to make your skin crawl. And let's not forget about the guests. Ghostly apparitions wander the halls, looking all twisted and messed up like they're straight out of a nightmare. And time? Yeah, time doesn't work right in there. Hours feel like days, days like years. It's enough to drive anyone bonkers. The scariest part? SCP-1437 seems to have a mind of its own. It preys on people's fears and desires, trapping them inside its walls indefinitely. No one knows where it came from or why it does what it does. All we know is, once you're in for good. Hit that subscribe button now and join our community of fellow horror enthusiasts. And remember, stay safe out there, because you never know what horrors might be lurking just beyond the shadow.